the American Revolution, given the award that I've got. I'm really honored to receive it. And it reminded me, given what we're dealing with as a country, of a story that was between three of the founding fathers where they were having a debate about what was the world's oldest profession. And the debate was between Benjamin Rush, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Rush was a physician. So Rush said the world's oldest profession is the physician because it was the doctor that cut Eve out of Adam's rib. So it had to be the physician. Thomas Jefferson said, no, that's not true. The world's oldest profession is the architect because it was the architect that brought order out of all the chaos in the universe. And Benjamin Franklin said, no, that's not right. The world's oldest profession is the politician. Who do you think created the chaos in the first place? And I thought about that because we were coming for this award, and then thinking about my little skirmish last night with the governor of California. And I mentioned this in the debate, and I've mentioned it before. I remember, as somebody that was born and raised in Florida, as a Navy lieutenant, getting orders to go to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado in right by San Diego in sunny Southern California. And I showed up, go to the bachelor officer quarters, and like a good Floridian, the first thing I looked for was the air conditioning unit. They're like, we don't have air conditioning here. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, you don't need it. Just open the window. And I'm like, all right, open the window. And there was no screen on the window, which in Florida we have bugs, you do. No. And sure enough, just open, Pacific Ocean, nice, fresh, beautiful scenery. And I'll never forget coming back from Iraq after being in the desert, not the greatest place in the world, get back from the desert, and then just feeling that fresh air off the Pacific Ocean. You're like, you know what? And this is probably 15 years ago. I don't like they pay high taxes, all that, but you could understand it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of real estate, beautiful state, up and down the coast. They've got so many things. You really have to try to mess up California. And yet Gavin Newsom has messed up California because of his left-wing policies. And that's what I think we're seeing throughout the country is you have places that are governed by leftist politicians imposing a leftist ideology, not just proving to be bad policies. Of course they are. They are leading to the collapse of societies in places like San Francisco and Los Angeles and Chicago and Philadelphia. I held up the map last night, and they actually do this. They have an app for San Francisco anytime, because people just relieve themselves in public and they defecate on the sidewalks and on the streets. So they have an app where people report every time they see human feces in San Francisco. And the map is covered with dots from this stuff happening. And then you go to a place like Los Angeles, and when I was there for the Reagan Library debate, my wife and we did a bunch of different events, and we probably ran into a half a dozen people that had been mugged within the last 6 months. Because you go, they mug you, and then they won't prosecute the person that mugged you. And so the inmates end up running the asylum. You saw what they did during COVID. These draconian policies cause people to flee these jurisdictions. And I held Newsom accountable for keeping kids out of school longer than any other state in this country, while he had his own kids in private, in-person schooling the whole time. That's how these people think. So they want to impose burdens on you, and then they want to relieve themselves of the burdens. But the reality is, this is causing huge, huge damage. So I look at what Biden's doing, and he's playing off the same playbook that's led to the destruction of California, New York, Chicago, all these other places. And they've done a lot of damage in just these last 3 years. And so our country's going in a direction where we are declining across the board and a whole host of other issues. And they want to accelerate that decline by taking a model of a place like California and imposing that nationally. And maybe that's a Biden second term. Maybe it's Kamala, maybe it's Newsom, although after last night I don't know that they would run him because he's got some issues. But that's the direction that they want to go. So the stakes of these elections are a lot higher than they really should be. I mean, we should agree on all the core principles. Yeah, you can apply those differently, and it should be like if a Democrat wins, like, okay, maybe they like higher taxes than we do, maybe they have different view on like some social welfare policies, but you wouldn't think that they would just turn their back on the rule of law. You wouldn't think they would just release people from jail. You wouldn't think that they would turn education over to the teachers union, but yet that's what they're doing. So the stakes are high because it's the choice, not even between Republican, Democrat, not even between left and right. It's really the choice between freedom and failure. What Florida shows is that conservative policies work. It shows that freedom works. What California shows is that leftist ideology and leftist politicians will lead us to national ruin and national failure. So what do we have to do to head this off? We got to do a number of different things. One, as Republicans, we need leaders who are going to be willing to fight back against all this stuff. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of people through the years who, they'll say things on a campaign trail, but the minute that they actually get in the kitchen and it starts getting hot, they want to run for cover. That's not how I operate. When I was governor during COVID, we had to make decisions that were going against people like Fauci, going against the media, the left, many Republicans, including the Trump administration, to make sure that our state was open, to make sure that kids could go to school, to make sure people weren't forced to wear masks and things like that. And when we were taking those positions, we were getting absolutely filleted by the media, by the left, by all these people. And the easier thing for me would have been to simply say, you know what, I'm not going to mess with this. I'm just going to say I'm following Fauci or whoever. Don't worry about that. But that's when people needed you to fight for them. They didn't have a voice at the time. So we were there to fight back against the insanity. And the fact that we were willing to fight back, Florida's now done better than it's ever done in its history, and that would not have been true if we weren't willing to dig in our heels and fight back. Another good example is, as a father of a 7, 5, and 3-year-old, and my wife as well, we are very sensitive to what's going on in schools. We're very sensitive to what's going on in the culture with respect to young kids, particularly putting on cartoons. And we just think that kids should be able to go to school, watch cartoons, just be kids, without having an agenda shoved down their throat. And we make sure that that's the case in Florida. And it's sad we even have to do, but we had to do parents' rights legislation with respect to not having sexualization of the curriculum in these early grades. You should not be telling a kindergartner that they were born in the wrong body. You shouldn't be telling a 3rd grader that their gender is a choice, and yet that's what people like Gavin Newsom do in California. That's what the left wants to do in schools around this country. And I know people in South Carolina have had to fight back on this. So we said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to stand up. We're going to do this law. The left didn't like it. The media didn't like it, which is fine. But then we had the most powerful corporation in Florida, Disney, that didn't like it, and they came after it. And most people were saying, when Disney gets involved, you just got to step back. They're too powerful. But again, if you're in office, are you going to fight for these kids? Are you going to fight for the parents? Are you just going to tuck your tail between your legs and go run and hide? So we understood that Disney was coming. But we also didn't care, because I didn't take an oath to subcontract out my leadership to a woke corporation based in Burbank, California. I took an oath to support the people that I represent. So we fought back and we won. So we've got to have people to realize that these are fights that are there, and you've got to be willing to dig in and do it. You also, though, while you're doing that, it's one thing to fight, but you got to win. You got to win these fights. And yes, win elections. And we haven't done a very good job of that as Republicans in recent years. I mean, we've lost a lot of elections we should have been winning around the country. In 2022, everyone was saying there was going to be a red wave. I remember Fox putting on these polls. They love these polls. Oh, Republicans are going to win, all this stuff. And it turns out it sputtered. Now, in Florida, we had a red wave. You know, we had the biggest Republican victory we've ever had in the state of Florida in a governor's race. But that's because we led, and that's because we delivered big results that didn't happen in the rest of the country. But we showed how you win and how you win in areas that Republicans haven't been able to do that in a long time. So Florida is really the template for that electoral success. But that is not enough. You got to win these big battles. And I'm the only guy running for president. You saw Newsom sit on the other side of the stage on me yesterday and what he represents. And I'm the only one running for president who has beaten these people time and time again. All these fights we have won. And you can look, yes, we beat the left and Disney on parents' rights. Yes, we beat Fauci and the Dems on keeping schools open and keeping our state open. We've beat the left on battling illegal immigration, like banning sanctuary cities and even transporting illegal aliens to sanctuary jurisdictions like Martha's Vineyard. We've beaten the left now in universities. We have in Florida all tenured professors must undergo review every 5 years and can be let go for poor performance. We've also beat the left on DE&I. It's been eliminated in our colleges and universities in the state of Florida. We beat the left on crime. We had prosecutor in Tampa and in Orlando, both supported by George Soros, both saying that they were not going to enforce the laws required by their constitutional oath, and I removed both of them from their posts. They are gone, and we're safer as a result. We have beat the left on fiscal responsibility since I've been governor. We've paid off 25% of our state's total outstanding debt. We've cut taxes every year. We've run big budget surpluses, and our economy is now ranked #1 in the nation amongst all 50 states by U.S. News and World Report. So we have fought these fights, but we have won these big battles. And as it stands today, I came into the state of Florida with 300,000 more Democrats than Republicans, a state that had typically been decided by 1 point either way. I came in winning by less than 1 point in 2018. And by the time I got reelected, we won by 20 points, 1.5 million vote margin. And as it stands today, we're not 300,000 as Republicans registrations under the Democrats. We are beating the Democrats by 650,000 registrations. That's just in 5 years. So we have left the Democratic Party in the state of Florida. It's basically a dead carcass on the side of the road at this point. We have defeated the left. We have defeated the Democrats, and that's why Florida is thriving, and that's why so many people are trying to move to the state of Florida, unlike the state of California. So winning is what we need to be doing. We were promised we would get tired of winning. I tell you this, I am tired of losing. I want to start putting points on the board for this country nationwide. And you also have to, as an executive, governor, president, you got to be right on the policy. Obviously, we see what's happening with Biden and the bad policies he's doing. You see bad policies out of Newsom in California, these other places. But that's not enough to just be right on the policy. You got to be willing to be a leader. You got to be capable of being a leader. And what that means is you have to be able to chart a vision about where your state or your country is going, and you got to be able to pursue that vision in the teeth of opposition, because it's easy to lead when the wind's at your back. When the rubber hits the road is when they're shooting at you, when they're sending the arrows at you. Are you going to be able to go through that and be able to deliver on this vision? Are you just going to fold? And that's what we've done in the state of Florida. Is I don't care what they say about me. I don't care about the attacks. I don't care about that. It's not about me. It's about you. And it's about charting the vision and being that vessel for people's hopes, dreams, and aspirations. And we need leadership in this country more than we've ever had. And you need a leader that people are going to be willing to get behind, and a leader that's going to be able to attract more support to the cause. We did it in Florida and we'll be able to do it for the United States of America. And one way I think about it is I can sit here and say, I promise you this, I promise you that. Honestly, I have credibility in doing that because I delivered on 100% of my promises in the state of Florida. Find me someone you can vote for who can say that. That does not happen very often. But rather than do that, I try to think, okay, we're running for president, 24, important election, we've got to win. I would then, because I can serve 2 terms, I would be re-elected in 2028 and then serve all the way till January 20th of 2033. So as that date approaches, January 20th, 2033, what will I be able to tell you we've actually accomplished for this country? And I think we'll be able to say a number of important things. One, we'll be able to tell you that we have restored the American dream in this country. People that work hard, play by the rules, get the most out of their God-given ability, will be able to get ahead again. You're not going to be held back by crippling inflation, by interest rates, by bureaucracy and red tape. We'll have opened up all of our domestic energy for production, and we'll have lowered energy prices across the board and be completely energy independent and energy dominant. And we will have disciplined Congress so that they're not spending us into oblivion any longer, and we will be on a much better fiscal course. We'll also be able to say that we've restored the sovereignty of our country. We're not going to have Mexican drug cartels running our southern border. We're not going to have millions of people flooding into this country illegally, and we're not going to have fentanyl coming into this country, killing tens of thousands of Americans each and every year. We'll be able to say that we have restored the strength and the vigor of the United States Armed Forces. We will have gotten rid of the woke, we will have gotten rid of the political and social agenda, and we will have reestablished the military to be focused on mission first. And if we do that, and when we do that, that will mean that we will be able to have successfully fended off the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party. The 21st century will be not a Chinese century, but an American century. We'll also be able to say that we've ensured that school systems are dedicated to educating kids, not indoctrinating kids. We will have respected the rights of parents to direct the education and upbringing of our kids, and we will have placed an important renewed emphasis on teaching young people about American civics, about the founding principles of this country, about our Constitution and Bill of Rights, and about what it means to be an American. We'll also be able to say that whether you live in a red state or a blue city, criminals are held responsible for their crimes. We're not going to let the inmates run the asylum, and every American family from coast to coast will be able to raise their kids in peace and security. We will have restored the rule of law to the United States of America. And finally, we'll be able to say that we've restored the U.S. Constitution to its rightful place as the centerpiece of our national life. That means having a government that is limited, that works alongside us to accomplish a few basic things, not an unaccountable bureaucracy that imposes its will on us without our consent, that is weaponized against us depending on where we sit in society. No, we will have reconstitutionalized this government and returned this government to its rightful owners, which is we, the American people. Now, there's more that we'll be able to say that we've accomplished, but if we can just say we've done those things, then we'll be able to say that we've restored America to what President Reagan called the shining city on a hill. And we have to do it, and we have to be successful, because we are in jeopardy right now of being the first generation of Americans to turn over to our kids and grandkids an America less prosperous and less free than the one we inherited. And if we do that, we will be the first generation of Americans to do so. And that would be a total disgrace. Now, our founding fathers understood, President Reagan articulated, that freedom is one generation away from extinction. It's not something that's passed along in the bloodstream. I think our founders appreciated the fragility of freedom as well. When they went to Philadelphia to craft the U.S. Constitution, they studied the history of every republic that had existed in the history of mankind because they wanted to draw lessons that they could apply to creating the Constitution here in the United States. And as they surveyed history, they figured out that there was really only one thing that all the republics throughout history had in common, and it was this: every one of them had failed. And so they believed it fell to the United States of America to answer the question once and for all, can people really govern themselves? Can you have a society based on the idea that our rights come from God, not from the government, that we live under a rule of law, not the rule of individual men? Or was mankind forever destined to live under various forms of despotism? And they fully expected that this country would be the one to decide that question. But they didn't think that they had solved it for all time just by creating a constitution. When Benjamin Franklin walked out of the convention, he was asked, did you give us a republic or a monarchy? He said, a republic if you can keep it. They understood that this would be something that each generation of Americans would have to tend to. They didn't expect that they had answered this question once and for all just by writing a good Declaration of Independence and then years later writing the Constitution. They understood that every generation would be tested. And I'm reminded of this when I fly into Washington, D.C. You look at, when you're flying into Reagan Airport, you look and see the National Mall. When you look out the left side of the plane, beautiful up-close pictures of the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, Jefferson, the reflecting pool, all these great monuments, and then even the beautiful U.S. Capitol building. You feel a sense of pride as an American because those symbolize the principles that make this country unique. But as I've done that trip, I've realized that the best monuments to our country are not on our nation's national mall. Because if you looked out the other side of the plane, you look over the Potomac River, you looked and saw a series of small, nondescript monuments orderly arranged over the rolling hills of a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And it occurs to me when I make that trip, and it occurs to me today, you can have the best Constitution in the world, you can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. They do not run on autopilot. They require every generation to step up and defend freedom, and yes, sometimes put on a uniform, risk your life, and even give the last full measure of devotion for service to this country. Now, we're not called upon to make sacrifices of that magnitude, but what we are called upon to do is to ensure that their sacrifices have not been in vain. We have a responsibility to preserve what George Washington called the sacred fire of liberty. This is a fire that burned in Independence Hall in 1776 when 56 men pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor to establish a nation conceived in liberty. It's a fire that burned at a cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, when this nation's first Republican president pledged this nation to a new birth of freedom. It's a fire that burned when a merry band of brothers stormed the beaches of Normandy, defeated Nazi Germany, and preserved freedom throughout the world. It's a fire that burned at the foot of the Berlin Wall in 1987, when a resolute president stood in front of that wall and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." This is our task, to carry that torch and to preserve that sacred fire of liberty. This is a responsibility we should not shy away from. This is a responsibility that we should welcome, and we will achieve that on behalf of this country in this presidential election campaign. I will fight for you as the next President of the United States. I will win for you, your family, and our country as the next President of the United States, and I will lead this country's revival as the next President of the United States. I'll always be somebody that will get the job done. I will be somebody that will conduct myself in a way that you can always be proud of, and I can promise you this: I will not let you down. Thank you all. God bless you. We appreciate you so much. Thanks to the Citadel for having me. We want your support in the South Carolina primary. We'll do you proud. We will get the job done. God bless you all.
Excuse me. Hey, before we close out, could I have all the cadets that would like a group picture with Governor DeSantis to come up to the stage at this time?
Where do you want me? Right here?
Yes, right smack in the middle. Perfect.
In front of that. Okay. This thing. Perfect.
Hopefully I don't break the glass that's in. Yes. If not all of us can fit on stage in 2 seconds.